Greetings, everyone, and welcome to the Produce Buzzers podcast. We are so happy you have joined us today, and I think you will be too after the show is over, because you will learn a lot about fresh fruits and vegetables, how to select and store them, how to prepare and cook them, and surprising facts about their history and origin. We hope it inspires you to eat more fresh fruits and vegetables, not only for your health, but also for your delight and pleasure as you explore their amazing world of taste and delicious flavors. Eating more of them will transform your life in so many positive ways. So settle back, relax, and get ready for another delicious adventure with the Produce Buzzers. Greetings, Produce Buzzers podcast fans, and welcome to another delicious episode of the Produce Buzzers podcast. Thanks for joining us today. I'm Edwin Stepp, your host and executive editor of producebuzz.com. We're joined today by Rick Stepp and Cynthia Benedetto, both contributing editors to producebuzz.com. But our lovely fearless leader, Teresa Nolan, can't be with us today. She had another prior engagement, but she'll be back next time. So today, Produce Buzzers podcast fans, this week's guest is a man who pioneered podcasting about fruits and veggies. He was probably the first person to have a radio show that focused on fresh produce. Long before we had the term podcasting, our guest was on the radio airwaves across the country with a show called The Produce Pear. Now, the pear was not spelled like the fruit, P-E-A-R, but like two similar good buddies, P-A-I-R, pear. And that show that started in 1998, he teamed up with another fresh produce colleague to talk all things fruit and veggie. Our guest today is Dan Avakian, a.k.a. Dan the Produce Man, and he has almost 50 years working in the produce business. He has a deep passion for all things about fresh produce and brings that energy along with his deep, rich, velvety voice when he talks about fruits and vegetables to his audience. You see, Dan moonlighted as a rock jock in the San Francisco Bay Area while he worked days in various positions in the produce business. So he has a lot of experience in producing interesting and informative entertainment in compelling ways. Dan is also featured regularly on one of the most popular podcasts about fruits and veggies, the Produce Industry Podcast with Patrick Kelly. He is featured in a specially themed version of the show called Fresh from the Field Fridays, which he zeroes in on particularly a fruit or veggie to give the audience everything they need to know about it. He will tell us how we can find that a little bit later in the podcast. But since we share the same passion for fresh produce, we love Dan's passion for fruits and veggies, and we are delighted to have Dan on the show today. Welcome, Dan, to the show, and thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Edwin. I sure appreciate being here. That's for sure.
It's great to have you. We met at a big produce show in October called the International Fresh Produce Association, and we just hit it off because we had such passion for fresh fruits and vegetables. And Dan is really interesting. He's got so much knowledge about fresh fruits and vegetables and the industry and anything else you want to know about fruits and veggies. But let's start with a little bit about your background, Dan. Tell us about your earlier years. You know, where did you grow up, and eventually, how did you get into fresh produce?
Well, let's see. I moved here to California when I was 10 years old from the state of Vermont, not by myself, my family, and was delivering newspapers and smoking cigars, delivering newspapers at 10 years old, right?
Oh, wow.
Running around the place.
You must have had a more lucrative paper out than I did if you could afford cigars. But anyway,
in those days, it was just, cheap white owls and things like that. But,
right.
Walking around doing that, watching the mafia movies. But by the time I became 15 years old, it's like, hey, man, I need a job. I shouldn't be a paperboy anymore. So my neighbor across the street said, hey, my brother-in-law, he's opening up a produce market up the street. Why don't you go see him? So I went over there, and it was an open air market, an old gas station converted. and there were trucks in there and crates, all right, not boxes, crates of produce being unloaded, cantaloupe crates and all these different things. And so I said to the guy, I says, hey man, Bill sent me here, I'm ready to work. And he said, okay, get started. I was doing what? Anyway, 40-foot truck pulls in the parking lot, and it is loaded with watermelons. And it is not, these aren't little watermelons. There were no seedless watermelons at the time, and they were not in bins, not even wood bins.
Right.
They were stacked from the floor to pretty much close to the ceiling. I guess they left some room there for airflow. And in between each layer of watermelons was hay or straw, like bale, that you would take from bales and throw in between there. And that was my job that day. Me and two guys unloaded that 40-footer full of watermelon, stacked head to toe, doing the watermelon toss.
Yeah.
And I remember he sold them for 4 cents a pound. I was like, wow. And that's 1976, so it's not that long ago. Well, maybe. But that was my introduction to fresh produce, but it didn't scare me away. I loved it. I fell in love with it. It was just I just enjoyed it. I stayed there till I was probably 24 years old.
Yeah, Rick's going to interject here with a question. Come on, Rick. I know you're going to ask him about
how many. Did you count how many watermelon were in the truck?
I counted how many rotten ones there were. Some of those things explode. You pick them up and they just dripped all, and the smell. Oh man.
So about the same time, I think in your bio that you said you started there about 1976, right?
That's right. Yes.
So a little bit later than that, Rick and I were, well, Rick may have been going earlier than that or about that time, but I really didn't start loading watermelons to bring to our market until I was probably 17 or 18, which would have been 77, 78. Anyway, we would go to the Columbia market, and just like you said, no bins in those days. They were loaded just by the piece, but they had workers lined up there that you could hire for a penny a melon, and they'd form a chain of 7 or 8 guys, and they would sing. They were usually black guys, and they would sing and count them. So we bought them by the piece, not by the pound. And they would, as they count, they say, "We got 1, we got 2, number 3." It was so cool, and they would harmonize it. It was great. So anyway,
we had to unload them when we got to the market.
Yeah, that's right. And it was just me and Rick.
You weren't singing with the same enthusiasm.
No. But anyway,
watermelon toss, and these were not small watermelons either. These were not
those long rattlesnake.
Sure, you get your workout. That's for sure.
Anyway, I didn't mean to focus on us, but I had to share that common theme there.
I think it's great.
So you unload these watermelons, and you're not discouraged. You stuck around.
Yeah, well, for one thing, and this is maybe a little crude for some people, but he was the owner of the original owner of this store was feeding us beer. Here I am at 15 years old, feeding us beer and these things called bennies, which would keep you awake. And so, it was terrible. When I look back on what it was and when I found out what it was, I wasn't really happy about it, but the way it is. But that kept us going. So I remember, going home at 7 or 8 o'clock that night, and my mother saying, "What the heck have you been doing?" And you stink because a lot of watermelons were rotten and they smell all over you, and that is a smelly thing.
Yep.
But that was all right. Got up the next day and went back and did other work, and just fell in love with it.
So this was a retail place, or was it wholesale?
Yeah, it was a retail. It was a guy from the wholesale market who decided he would open up a retail market.
Yeah.
Called it Produce Unlimited. And everything was something unlimited in those days. Furniture unlimited, records unlimited. Well, this was Produce Unlimited. Right?
That was just before R Us, Toys R Us.
Right.
Did anybody come up with Produce R Us? That we should have had that one. But anyway.
Could be. Okay. Well, these guys came up with real produce. that was a lot of fun. Those days, things were different. Had cantaloupes in 70-pound crates, and one of those 70-pound crates fits exactly 150 record albums. Just so you know. And
You're
I had like
a
6 of
vinyl
those 4
collector.
records.
I'm sensing a vinyl record collector here.
Yes, absolutely.
Interesting. Yeah, I remember we bought those cantaloupes in crates, didn't we, Rick? That seems like
Yeah.
came out that way.
California and Arizona cantaloupes.
Yeah.
Even though we had local cantaloupes in the Carolinas, the best cantaloupes were California, Arizona. Ours were very watery. You would never see a South Carolina cantaloupe in California. I don't think. Maybe, but
Well, maybe someone brought one with them. Who knows? And probably were older varieties at the time too. So
Yeah.
as the varieties change over the years to accommodate this or that,
Right.
get more flavor in them. Of course, all those other melons. We've got all these new melons these days.
Yeah, amazing
that
stuff.
are fantastic. But everybody knows the real time of the year for melons is, at least here in California, is mid-July, August, September. That's your best time of the year for melons. Every other time of the year, to me, it's hit and miss, whether you're going to get something that tastes like a sweet cucumber or something with all that vine ripened flavor.
Yeah, that's a good description, sweet cucumber, because I've had a lot of those.
Yes, here. Go to any hotel.
Yeah, exactly. Well, so this is a retail market. Was this in Alameda where you are now, or was it somewhere else?
It was.
Yeah.
It was in Alameda, right on the corner of Central Avenue and Oak Street. So it was 1 block west of the main district.
Okay.
I remember one morning the owner, and they only had it for about 10 months, and some things happened, and then another guy took it, who I learned a whole lot from, the guy who took it over. But
Yeah.
I remember him and his wife saying, we expected to do business, but we never expected to do this. There were people lined up before the place would open. It was just getting excited. At the time, white corn wasn't as popular as it is now. Now it's mostly, around here at least, it's the main corn.
Yeah.
And yellow was popular, and we brought in some white sweet corn, and I'll never forget. Oh my gosh, white corn! We haven't seen that in years, and people are just buying stuff, filling their bags. It was exciting. So
Yeah.
that really, coming from Vermont, where I, had an uncle, had a farm, and we lived out in the country, and my mother grew massive gardens, and I always had this connection, and I always loved going to the grocery store. Coming out here to California, where everything exists,
Yeah.
and seeing all that excitement and the trucks coming in from the farms and the whole bit was just it to me, it was exciting. So
yeah, you are in the epicenter of fresh fruits and veggies for the world. California agriculture is. We might talk about that. I didn't put that in the questions I sent you ahead of time, but some of your podcasts I've listened to. I know you get into a bit of the history of California agriculture, like Luther Burbank. I know you've referenced him a few times, but anyway, would love to hear your thoughts on that at some point. And living right there, it's a great. I lived in California for most of my life, but in LA area, but not too far out of the San Joaquin Valley. But when you go up in that region, it's amazing. So anyway.
Oh yeah, plenty in LA too. That's for sure.
Yeah, right.
I have to say that we had these produce markets since, or like maybe 1970, and we sold a lot of local items, especially peaches, watermelons, apples. But when I went to college in California in Pasadena. When I went there in the fall of '73, and I went into the El Rancho supermarket and saw all the variety, even I was dumbfounded at the variety and the beautiful fresh produce in those stores compared to what we had been dealing with.
Right.
Oh yeah, and that's what blew me away here, coming to California. I mean, yeah, it's in Vermont, where there was produce growing all around us, but never the vast array
Right.
we saw here in the stores.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just and today, I mean, you're saying that's 1973, and there was that amount of variety.
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean? And then today, it's, I mean, you go into a produce department today, you got everything under the sun.
Yeah.
So
I'm always shocked by the fact that I'm usually disappointed in the produce department.
I understand that the large chains, at least here, I can't say all over the country, have lost their soul. You used to go in a produce department, you had people in there at new produce that were passionate about it, but a lot of things have changed. It's different. You also used to
100%. Yes.
yeah, you could work there and also still afford to buy a house. I mean, you could afford to live, and that just doesn't pay that anymore. And the thing is you go into a store now and you may have some guys in there that know what they're doing, or gals. Now, the independents that I go to quite a bit, and independent chains and just independent markets, they're spot on, man. The departments are full, it's fresh. People are excited, they're knowledgeable, you can have conversation, you can get things that from local farms. So I see the independents really doing what the chains should be doing. But again, I'm not in that part. I did work for a chain in the 80s. I worked for Fry's Food Stores, and they were here in the Bay Area at the time. And we did that. We just worked our rears off and got it all done. And we had fun. It was fun. It was great.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Things have changed, and I don't want to sound like this old guy saying back in my day, but it is different. But I'd like to see more excellence brought to the table. And you got to pay those people. You can pay somebody in an office doing data and spreadsheets and graphs, and all that's fine. But pay the people who are the face to the person who is going to buy all that produce that you have created all these graphs and spreadsheets for.
That's a good point.
This is where the rubber hits the road, man. And I think the people should be trained better and should be paid well. And I know, that's probably ruffling a lot of feathers, but it's true.
You raise an excellent point, Dan, about the face, and I had never thought of. I've been complaining about the produce managers. I don't even bother to ask anymore when I'm in a produce section because you're not going to get
because you know more than they do.
Yeah, but that face, and there is no more important department. Maybe the meat, the meat section where you interact with the butcher, if they're really a butcher. But anyway, in the produce department, people need help, and there's a lot of waste there that if it's not sold properly and gets off you're absolutely right. And I'm going to give you a plug because I know that you have been a consultant to these retailers with all your experience. And so if there are any retailers listening out there, you need to give Dan a call, because he can help improve that. There's nothing more important. That is the face of your whole chain, really. Now,
exactly.
Yeah.
That's
forget
in the retailer's defense, however, follow the money.
Yeah.
Oh my God, follow the money. Here we go.
It's very competitive now.
Yeah.
And wages are much higher, overheads higher. It's very difficult to provide that type of service and quality and compete on price.
But if that's 60% of your profits, don't you have to pay attention to that?
Yeah.
And we have a chain in Minnesota called, it's now merged, Lund's and Byerly's supermarkets, very upscale, and they do all of that. We don't have one in the city of Duluth, Minnesota, where I live, but they're in the Minneapolis metro area. And you will literally pay twice as much in those stores for your food as you would in a mainstream retail chain. So if money is no object, you definitely want to shop at a store like that. But unfortunately, the competition has driven what we're getting. And
and I guess follow the money works too. Some of the other shelf stable products in the middle of the store, there's a lot more merchandising and marketing money chasing those things, and the produce industry does, I think. But you don't need somebody to interact with you on the bag of potato chips. You know,
Right.
it's
It's
pretty
there.
much easy decision, right? But
Right.
in that produce
Nobody
department,
interact with me on these potato chips. I'm eating the whole bag.
But you know, one of the most brilliant chains, Walmart, they started bringing all this produce in these returnable plastic containers, and so they just save money. They just put the plastic container out there, and then they switch it out. End of the day, the produce has been purchased, and the displays are half empty or half full, whatever you want to call it. And it's all in the effort of saving the consumer money, but not giving them that quality that we were used to back in the 70s.
yeah.
So
I have to quote my good buddy Ron Pelger, who writes for the Produce News, and he's a consultant himself. And he's always saying, you know, big, full displays is what sells produce.
yeah,
And he's right. When I had my store, we made massive displays, and if they weren't massive, we made them look massive, and we all know how to dummy up displays.
Right.
My employees, I told them exactly this. People are coming to, especially the checkers, people are coming to the check stand, and they're opening up their wallet, and they're giving you what they have worked very hard for all week in exchange for this good, top quality, fresh fruit and vegetables and your wonderful personality. I want each and every one of them treated like they are the only person in the world. And then my produce workers as well on the floor, helping people with their purchases. So, and I know what you're saying. Look, we're in some terrible inflation that we haven't seen since the early 70s, where people are pinching their pennies. But I've always said the best deal is getting the best quality fresh fruit and vegetables for your money, no matter what the price is. I mean,
Yeah.
I was a guy who bought a store. I saw 2-pound clamshells of blueberries, $9.99. That's quite a bit of money, but
Yeah.
people
Yeah,
are
but if
buying
they
it.
don't, if you get it for a third of that price, which it seems to be, well, maybe not a third, but a half, and they taste like crap, or they have no sweetness, you know, what is it? But even at these higher prices, you know, like the ones in Byerly, I guess, was that the name of that store? You know, maybe it is twice as much, but it's still a bargain. Fresh produce is still an amazing bargain for your buck, you know, compared to processed foods and other things. So
It's an investment. It's
yeah.
an investment in your future, in your present, because you are filling your body with incredibly beautiful nutrients that Mother Earth has given us. And so you invest now, and later on, you know, you won't be dealing with all those expensive medical bills from eating, you know, processed foods all your life. So
Yeah. Yep.
that's
And
another way to look at it.
the higher the quality, the more nutritious it is, you know.
Absolutely.
More vibrant color and sweetness is going to be more nutritious. So great points. So,
but I would like to encourage our listeners out there, when you're shopping, don't be an emotional shopper. Sure, it's wonderful to be able to walk into a produce department that's fully stocked, and there's all this emotion, and you smell the smells, and you just load up your cart with everything. But I can go into the cheapest store in my town and hunt for fresh produce, but that doesn't mean everything in the department's fresh. But I can find good fresh produce in even the cheapest stores without having to have the emotion of the big, beautiful displays. So I don't want anyone to be discouraged from buying and eating produce just because maybe they're a little discouraged with the way things look in their produce department.
Well, look, if you wouldn't take it home to your mother, don't buy it.
That's right.
That's her. Or take it to your grandmother's house or whatever it is. If you would bring it there and say, "Wow, look at this," buy it.
that's great. That's good advice. Perfect advice. Well, let's get back to your history here a little bit, Dan, because I'm intrigued by, you started in this produce business, but then you get the fever. I guess you were probably listening to Wolfman Jack somewhere back there, weren't you? Because he was in the Bay
Oh
Area.
yeah, I was listening to good old Wolfman.
And did he inspire you to want to be a rock jock? How did you get the fever to do that?
No, Frank Zappa
Oh,
inspired me to
okay,
be a rock
yes.
jock.
Yes.
Right with the song Slime, man, which applies to today. If people actually listen to that song and listen to the lyrics, and as they pick up their phones, they'll realize, hey, that applies to today. But it was Frank Zappa where me and my brother used to imitate him, where you go, that's right, folks, don't touch that dial, and we'd start talking like that and doing tape recorders and stuff.
Yeah.
But what was really weird was I had, you can appreciate this, Edwin. I had, about 2,200 records, record albums that I took very much really good care of.
Wow.
And a lot of them were rarities and rare pressings and original pressings. And I really sought it out. And I had those cantaloupe crates full of those records. And a friend of mine, Jay Michaels, who was a popular disc jockey and technician for radio stations here in the Bay Area, came into the store where I was working, and we started talking. And I said, hey, he says, well, I've we've got KCFM going, and we got a rock jock on there, and I know you got a lot of rare records. Why don't you bring some up to the station and talk with him and talk about them and play them? It's all right. So I did that for a few months with him. His show started at 7:00 at night, and I did that for a few months. And then one night he says, Dan, I'm going to go to the restroom. I'll be right back. Watch everything. If this song ends, press this button. And I had watched him do everything with the Techniques turntables and the cart machines and the whole bit. And okay. So he's gone, and the record ends. I play the next one, and then he doesn't come back. So I better put another one on. So I grabbed something and put it on, and he doesn't come back. And it kept going, and I'm going, shoot, man, what's going on here? The phone rings. I answer it. It's the station manager. He goes, what's going on? Who are you? The top of the hour ID has been missed. Where is he? And I says, he goes, put something long on and go look for him. So I put on Rare Earth Get Ready, which is a whole half of an album side, 21 minutes and 30 seconds. Okay.
I remember that one.
Yeah. And I went looking for Ron. And he was nowhere to be found. Wasn't in the bathroom where he said he was going to be, nowhere in the building. And so I go back into the studio and pick up the phone because the station manager was waiting on the phone. And he says, look, you've got to do an ID. It's an FCC regulation. You've got to a top of the hour ID. So this is what you do. And he told me what to do and open up the microphone. I opened up the microphone and said, hey, folks, KCFM here, San Francisco, Dan here, blah, 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 blah. Played the next record. And he got on the phone. He says, okay, you're hired. I said, what? No way. And so I started doing the 7 to 10 show. And I could bring my own records. It was great. It was all top 40 during the day and all that kind of commercial stuff. And then
was this an FM album oriented station in those days, or was it AM?
It was an FM station.
Okay.
And
those were the days when FM was really starting to surge, right?
Yeah. Well, it was when it was still cool. There were still some really cool stations. It became commercial and became the same thing as AM over time. But in those days, yeah. And so, the top 40 all day long with the commercial stuff going on. And then when I came on, boom. And I always made sure to switch after that top of the hour ID in the news. I would go right into something really rocked out to let people know, hey, it's different now.
Yeah. That's great.
In the morning, it's going to be different.
Yeah.
So did that fella ever resurface?
No. Never did. Well, yeah. He just walked out. He had quit. He has had some personal problems, and he just couldn't take it anymore, and a bunch of other things, and he just moved on. So
he never came back. He just left.
No, I took the spot, and that was that.
Well, he must have had a lot of confidence that you could just take over. So that was, he had already seen.
Yeah,
Yeah, because I
Showed
don't
me
think.
everything.
I mean, I guess you could be that down that you just walk out and let the station go dead air, but that's
Well,
amazing.
last I heard, he was doing pretty good.
Okay,
So,
well,
about
that's
20
good to
years
hear.
ago, but
Yeah, that's good to hear. This does, listeners, this does have relevance to fresh produce. We're going to get there in a minute, but I wanted to know how he got started as this disc jockey. You want to tell us more about that, Dan?
well, sure, yeah. After KCFM sold, formats change, and I don't want to, do this. So years later, I was working at another produce market, and my buddy Guido the gardener, he was writing a produce column for the local papers, and he was someone that I had known years and years and years ago because one of his best friends was dated my little sister. So, the friend circle grew.
Right.
And he kept coming to the produce market saying, "You got all the radio connections. Come on, let's do a produce radio show." I go, no, I don't want to do that. Come on.
Who would listen
bugged
to
me
that
for almost
Guido?
a year. Yeah. So the guy who had started KCFM was program director at another station in Contra Costa County. And I finally, after a year of Guido bugging me, I said, okay, look, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to take him up there to Jay's station. We're going to go in the production room. We're going to make a tape. He can mass produce them, send them out to everybody, and get all the disappointing no's back, and then leave me alone. Okay. So that's what we did. We went out there, and Jay said, "Yeah, you can use the production room. Go ahead, do it." And went in there, pressed the recorder, opened up the mic, started talking produce, and we're having a pretty good conversation because we're both in the produce business, and we're friends, so it worked out pretty good. And about 20 minutes of that, the owner of the station bursts in the production room and says, "I want you on the air today at 4:00. What? What? And Guido looks at me and goes, "See?" I'm going, "Oh, no." And so we started doing it on that local station. And, then Jay said, "Look, we want to get you on Talk America." And I said, "What's that?" And he goes, "It's a radio network. There's thousands of stations, and, there's different tiers, and you can get in there." And so things went on, and we ended up on there on about 500 stations. Some in major markets, others were small stations where chickens were listening and things. But
they count. Yeah. Nielsen has a chicken rating. I've seen it.
Yes, Nielsen chicken rating, like Sanguli with his rubber chickens.
Oh yeah, that's right.
But that's what we did. And then, there was a TV series coming out called Living It Up with Allie and Jack, Allie Wentworth and Jack. No, Jack Wentworth, I don't know. There was supposed to be a what do you call that? A competition for another show with Kathy Lee Crosby. I never watched any of those shows. I just heard the names. So I guess it was a famous daytime show. This was supposed to be CBS's competition. They flew us out to New York. We did the segments. They're actually up on my YouTube channel. And then they said to us, we want to bring you back monthly to do produce segments. Great. Wow. Okay. And I said, okay, we'll do that. They paid for everything. So, okay. But 3 weeks later, I get an email saying, "Oh man, they canceled us. The show is no longer." All right, that's cool. So it did produce on Channel 2 here in the Bay Area.
Was that a TV station?
Yeah, KTVU Channel 2 on a TV show called Bay Area People on Saturday mornings. And also Fox News got a hold of me. So I went on Your World with Neil Cavuto a couple of times when we had freezes and different things going on, fresh produce. Yeah, and that was a lot of fun because y'all always sent a personal handwritten note afterwards. Cool. So just started doing it in the media. So when I bought my store, I put the media experience and the produce experience together, right, and started advertising produce on YouTube, mainly just for the customers to come into the store.
Oh, that was smart.
what happened was my middle son comes to me and he goes, "Dad, your watermelon video's got over 6 million views." I said, "All right, man, we're going to sell watermelons." He goes, "No, no, no, you don't understand. Forget the watermelons." I go, "No, where are the people? I want to sell the watermelons, you know?" And he goes, "No, you can make money off this. This is giving you a lot of these views and this and that." And I said, "Okay, you go do whatever it is in the computer. You go do all that. I'm out here with the customers and the produce." And he did. So I just kept putting things up on YouTube that we had at the store mainly, and telling people about it. And that's really the whole reason for it.
Yeah. And those
and-
videos are still out there. Is that true?
Yeah, they're still up
So
on my
if-
YouTube channel.
if-
I also have a Rumble channel. They're both called Dan the Produce Man.
Okay.
And
if our
sometimes
listeners, so the listeners can go find those videos and get some tips on various produce items, sounds like.
Yes, absolutely.
Dan the Produce Man on YouTube and Rumble.
Yes, that is
Okay.
correct.
Got it. All right. Okay. Yeah. So continue. You there's 6 million views on the watermelon, and your son, does he connect you to the ad revenues that YouTube start?
Yeah, and you know, it's a mild revenue, but it's okay. You know, it's something. But I just kept making them, and then after I sold the store, the owner said, can you come here and make some videos?" And I said, "Sure." And so I kept doing them. There's not as many of them these days. Guido and I were doing some together for a while too.
Yeah.
But it's the thing with those videos, nothing was planned.
Wow.
It was all produce inspired.
Yeah.
So Marcia from Oya Organic Farms would bring in this beautiful green garlic, just picked, gorgeous stuff. I go, "Wow, this is beautiful. Let's do a video."
Right.
And we just pull out the phone or the camera or whatever it was and do something on the spot. I never really planned them out, and that was that. And
well, all
later
that,
ones I
all
planned
those
out.
years of experience, you were ready to talk about it and talk about it eloquently because of your speaking experience. But they say impromptu is not impromptu. Like impromptu comedy, they spend a lot of time working on bits.
Oh yes,
with they can get cued to remember this. Not like they're thinking of it right then most of the time. But anyway, so that sounds like what you were doing. It's impromptu, but because of your experience, it flowed naturally.
Yeah, and I don't do well with scripts. We've tried it. I don't do well with scripts. What I do, but bullet points are fine. If there's an easel with the bullet points that I want to cover, right by the camera, that'll remind me. Oh yeah, make sure you say that too.
Got it. No teleprompter for you, huh?
No, I couldn't do that either. It just couldn't do it. It was like, man, come on.
Yeah.
So
that's great.
That's the way it is.
So let's talk about this market, because now you started working in a market in Alameda as a teenager, I guess. It's not in the 70s, but is this the same market that you owned, or is this another market that you bought? How did you wind up owning the market?
Well, it's interesting because after I left the market, when I got into my 20s, I went to work for Fry's food stores. Then I went on to Costco, and we helped put that produce program together in the 80s, and Cisco in the 90s.
Oh, wow.
And Web Van, and all these different projects and produce things. And in 2006, the second owner, the one who really made it something, his son was running it, and after his father had died, he just lost heart. It was kind of their thing together. Even though his father had retired and moved to Hawaii, they would still talk on the phone all the time. And so he lost heart and said, "Look, Dan, you've always loved this place. You want it, you got it." So I bought it, and with the intention of buying the property and rebuilding it, just because it was a beat up old place at the time,
but in a really chief location, prime location.
Oh, amazing location. And but So yeah, I ran the market, and most of my kids had come work there throughout the years. They're different ages, and it was just a great place. It became very popular. We won a lot of awards. I brought things in from local farms, small organic farms, some farms that were 6 acres, other farms that were 60 acres, and then of course larger growers as well, the produce terminals. But the thing that I loved the most about it was, midsummer, you cut a peach, right? And you hold that peach up, and you say to the person, yesterday at this time, this peach was still on the tree, and you cut it open and you hand it to them, and their face lights up, and they go, "Oh my gosh, this is the best thing I ever had." A Fay Alberta or an Angelus peach, one of those old varieties that the stores don't carry. I said, "Yeah, and you can't get these at the large chains because their systems don't allow for it." Or going out to the country and having a major grower call me up on the phone because of the relationships. Say, "Hey, Dan, we've got we're picking corn this morning. Come on out and get it." So I go out there with my pickup truck and I pick corn. I pick up the corn when there's big giant other trucks, Safeway trucks, Rayleigh trucks, and I'm pulling in with my pickup truck. And I'll never forget what I said to the grower. I says, over the years I've bought a lot of produce from you, but coming here now with you're loading up all these major trucks, and I come in here with my pickup. And he says, "Dan, I will always have room and time for you and your pickup truck." That made me feel really good.
Wow,
Then I
that's
bring
great.
that corn back to the store, big sign, fresh pick today. The chains couldn't do that. Excitement, man, good stuff. It was just, I loved it. It was just exciting.
I understand that. I know Rick does as well. We had those markets. We had similar experiences. So. And Cynthia, on the Hunts Point,
our inspiration was the DeKalb Farmers Market in Atlanta. Did you ever visit there?
No, I never have been to Atlanta.
It's the king of all produce markets that I've ever seen in my entire lifetime.
Really?
They were in a huge warehouse and huge displays, and it's an international store because there's so many ethnic groups in the Atlanta area that shop there. They have the flag of literally every country in the world flying in front of their store. And we went there and saw that, and we were so inspired by it that we wanted to start a market in Charlotte and make it into the same type of store, but that never came to be. But the DeKalb market is still there in Atlanta, and if you're ever there, you really need to visit it.
And what's it called again? What's writing this down?
It's spelled DeKalb.
That's a town. That's a community in the Atlanta area. So I guess it's in DeKalb, right? DeKalb is.
It's in DeKalb County. It's spelled. Some people would pronounce it DeKalb, like the corn variety DeKalb.
That's how I got A's in spelling all through schools, pronouncing words the way they were spelled.
Yeah, but this is it's called your DeKalb County Farmers Market. But they have produce from all over the world, and they were doing this back in the late 70s when they first started.
It's bigger
out.
than the Berkeley Bowl, or because that's massive too.
Yeah, I've never seen it. So as far as the ones I've ever seen, as far as a retail produce market, it's the biggest one and the best one I've ever seen in my life. But I'm not as traveled as yours.
On my list now.
This is in a huge warehouse that would be the size of a wholesale warehouse. Nice. Every display is like 10 feet by 10 feet.
Beautiful.
And every nationality, you see African people in there in their native attire. You see Asian people, you see Mexican people.
Because they have the fruits and vegetables that they're used to in there.
And they have everything.
Yeah.
Our first cousin was the salesman for Homestead Pole Bean Co-op in Homestead, Florida for many years. And he sold the guy pole beans. He would buy like 500 bushels of pole beans, which is a specialty item, and just pile them as high as the ceiling, and people would just grab it. This goes back to what we were talking about earlier. That's what you really would like to have in your produce department is this type of display with everything piled high and really fresh. And so that's how we got inspired to start our market.
So the market, you've got the market. How many years did you have it, and how did
13
that?
years.
Oh, wow.
And I couldn't, the deal to buy the property fell through, and that was really, I needed it to do what I wanted to do because I was going to do something.
Yeah.
And the city ate it up, the bank ate it up, everybody ate it up. They thought it was great. I was going to rebuild the store. The store faced west. I wanted to face it north, so the sun wasn't beating down on the front of the place all day long.
So it was open air market.
Yes, and it was on the corner, so it was perfect location. Alameda High School's right across the street. Giant church that had been there since the 1800s on one corner, and then a massive restaurant in the original Alameda movie theater built in the 30s across the street as well. Just great, beautiful neighborhood. But anyway, so I was going to rebuild the place. I was going to put a rooftop greenhouse, enclosed solar panels, because it was an old gas station where the tanks used to be. I was going to put plastic tanks down there and capture water and all that bit. And the city ate it up, the bank ate it up, but things happened with the landlord, and they couldn't sell me the property. So
well,
I moved on and sold it to a good buddy of mine who has it right now. So I have a good place to shop. And he's doing great. He kept my name on there, and he's.
Oh, really? That's
Yeah.
good. Yeah,
So,
that's great.
What is the name of the store?
well, when I had it was Dan's Fresh Produce. He changed it to Dan's Farmers Market.
Oh,
Because when I had my store, it said Dan's Fresh Produce, and the tagline was "It's a farmer's market every day." And so.
oh, that's a good tagline.
Yeah.
Very good tagline. Okay. Yeah. So speaking of taglines, or maybe we should say titles, I want you to tell us about the segment you do for Patrick Kelly on his produce industry podcast called Fresh from the Field Fridays. How did that get started?
So Patrick got a hold of me and said, "Hey, can you be on my podcast?" I said, "Sure." And then we were talking afterwards, and he said, "I want to start a Friday podcast called Fresh from the Field Fridays. Do you think you want to take the reins on that?"
Well, good.
And I said, "Sure, okay." So I did.
Right.
So I've been doing that ever since. And so he does the Monday, the produce industry podcast show. He's very energetic, very passionate, but that is more industry related.
Yep.
Tech, supply chain issues, things of that nature, which are all very interesting. I still just focus on the produce because that's my forte. That's what I'm all about.
Yeah.
And so it works out really well.
That's great. Yeah, Patrick, we've had Patrick as a guest, and I know him got to know him pretty well. And it is more industry related, and yours on, do you do it every Friday, or is it,
no, it's every Friday. Yeah.
Every Friday. Great. Okay, good.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we mentioned it in the intro, Fresh from the Field Fridays on the Produce Industry Podcast. If you go to Dan's webpage, which is dantheproduceman.com, is that correct?
That is correct.
dantheproduceman.com. He's got links there, so you can click on that and find the Fresh from the Fields Fridays. Very interesting. A lot of good tips there. And speaking of tips, what can you give our listeners some of your favorite tips for buying fresh produce, getting the best deal and the best quality?
Well, sure.
Favorite tips that you may have that they may surprise them, or maybe they know it's something they wouldn't know.
Okay. Well, I'll give you a couple of tips. One I got from the legendary Graham Kerr, who I just was a regular guest on the Produce Pair radio show, and one of the most gracious gentlemen you could ever come across.
Oh, let me ask what made him legendary, because I'm not sure.
He was the Galloping Gourmet.
Oh, right. Yes, that's right. Yes, of course. Right.
And then he did, then after his wife got sick, he switched everything to all healthy foods and did a lot of different TV series promoting healthy foods.
Yeah.
And his tip is to get rid of those bins at the bottom of your refrigerator, put other stuff in there, put your meats and things in there, get some sort of other storage containers like Tupperware or something, put them on the top shelf of your refrigerator, and put your fruits and vegetables in there so that they're not down there at the bottom, getting lost, getting rotten, becoming forgotten about, whatever it is. And they're always right there in front of you, reminding you. So I always thought that was a great tip. And then, my tagline is, it's always best when you get it fresh.
Right.
So I would say to consumers, when you go into the grocery stores, and real quick, when I said the things I said about the chains, produce departments earlier, there are pockets of the stores within those large chains that do a great job.
Yeah.
But when you go in there, the produce department is usually the first thing. Bypass it. I know. I know. It's probably bypass the produce department. Buy all your produce last. Buy it all last, and then because look, if you're buying packaged salads or berries, you're going to cart those all over the store while you get your other stuff, and it's sitting out of the food temperature safety zone, and you're going to be moving it around when you're putting other things in carts, so you're handling a little bit more. And then so you buy it last, and then when you put it in your car, don't go driving around doing all kinds of other errands and things, because then you're going to go back to the store and say, hey, my salad mix went bad. Well, because you broke the cold chain.
Right.
So try and arrange your shopping trips to where you do all your other stuff first, get your produce last, bring that home, get what goes in the refrigerator into the refrigerator, get what goes into the dark, the potatoes and onions and whatever you put them in, and it will last longer. In some items that you don't use the whole thing, pull it out, cut off what you're going to use, or empty the bag out of what you're going to use, put it back into the refrigerator so it stays cold and it will last longer.
Yeah, those are great tips. Those are tips I'd never thought of.
Farmers markets as well.
Yeah.
You go into the farmer's market and you see a big, beautiful display of strawberries. Oh, I'm going to get a whole 3-pack of those. Do it on the way out.
Right.
Because they're going to bang around in that bag, and a lot of that stuff isn't pre-cooled, and you're just going to lose its virility.
That's great. Yeah, and it's really interesting that just those extra minutes, or if you're doing other errands after you buy it, and maybe hours, that can really have an effect on the longevity, the shelf life. So great tips there. Yeah. What else? Any others?
Well, let's see. Oh, it's asparagus season. It is artichoke season. Don't shy away from those brown artichokes. Those have been frosted by the cold winter, and they have amazing flavor, and that brown goes away when you cook them. Those are the older varieties if you can get them. English peas are also coming into season right now.
Yeah.
And you don't want to buy those. You don't want to buy a big fat pod, and you don't want to buy a little flat pod. You want them right in between. You want the peas to be about a medium size to get the sweetness. And one way to check for freshness is open that pod up. Don't do this all over the store, but throw that thing down. And if that pea bounces like a ball, it's nice and fresh. If it just falls down like a medicine ball, forget it.
Interesting.
It's lost everything.
Why is a bigger pea in that pod not as good as a medium? Does it get starchy? And
yes.
like a lot of vegetables, the bigger they are, sometimes they get starchy or whatever.
Yeah, they outgrow their prime.
Okay.
And they do taste starchy. If you want the sweetest and the most flavorful, just the medium-sized pods, and you're all set.
That's thanks for that. The seasonal info here. That's great. This is great artichoke season. I didn't know about the brown, but that makes sense if it gets. You're saying it gets did you say a frost or just a colder night?
Well, what happens?
They don't get frost where they grow the artichokes, do they?
Yeah, it gets really cold. In the Castroville, Monterey County growing region, And what happens is that cold frost starts to peel the thin layer of skin, the epidermal peel on that. Then what happens is the sun comes out and the frost is on there, and the sun comes out and it acts like a magnifying glass, and it burns that part of it and it turns brown. But the thing is, those super cold temperatures really give those old heirloom and original heritage varieties of artichokes amazing flavor that you just won't get in the desert artichokes. And that brown goes away. You put those things, I bought an Instant Pot, and the only reason I bought it was to cook artichokes. And I put them in there, and the brown just goes away. It turns completely green. Everything's fine. The leaves are great to eat. It's just a little bit of peel on the outside of the artichoke.
Right. You're not eating the outside of the leaves anyway, right? You scrape that off. But that makes sense. That frost sweetens it up, doesn't it? Those cold temperatures sweeten it up. Well, you know, a lot of fruits and vegetables need some cold nights to at least color up. I didn't know that about artichokes. And we used to we represented the California Artichoke Board, and I don't remember that fact. It's been many years ago.
I do remember. We had Edwin and I both worked for the California Artichoke Board, and there was a slogan that we had for something like frost-kissed artichokes.
Winter kiss bronze tipped artichokes.
Yeah.
Yes. Frost kissed and winter kiss bronze tipped. I remember that. That was the 80s when that campaign came out.
Yes.
And
everyone just forgot.
Yeah, I forgot. That was quite a few years. I worked for them in the 90s, but I'm getting Alzheimer's. So.
Well, when you've done this so long, you forget things. I mean, that's all there is to it.
Right.
Well, I'm glad you remembered the name. I was thinking Frost-Kissed, but Frost-Kissed was one of the slogans. And
yes, Frost-Kissed. Okay. The first one was Winter Kiss bronze tipped artichokes. I remember that because we were at Fry's and these brown artichokes came in. And I go, what's going on here?
And was it Marilyn Monroe a spokesperson for the California artichokes back in the day?
I think she was. Yeah, I think she was.
Yeah, before I think she was still. But... Yeah, that's right. She wore the potato sack. I think she might have still been Norma Jean at that time, but I don't know. I can't remember.
Wow.
But
so
anyway.
That long ago, they were using women to objectify their products? Wow.
Yeah. Now, you alluded earlier to changes. Tell us, what are some of the changes in the world of fresh produce that you've observed over your 45 to just short of 50 years? And quality and those kind of, or anything else you want to talk about, changes in what's in the fresh produce world.
Oh man, a lot has changed. The packaging, we talked about the cantaloupe crates earlier, and now they're in 30-pound boxes, a little more manageable. They don't hold up well on a pallet, but they're more manageable. So a lot of the packaging has changed, and that helps out. Grapes we used to get in open lugs. They were called Los Angeles lugs, and you would display those loose on the stand, and that you're always sweeping them up and taking the loose grapes from the bottom of the crate and sticking them in strawberry boxes and selling those as well. So the grapes going into bags, and then the bags changing, and then the bags changing again. I remember that when there wasn't even a red seedless grape on the market, and we mentioned the watermelons, and you have the personal sized watermelons today that we didn't have in the old days. You can take one of those and eat the whole thing, or not have to have your refrigerator loaded up with watermelon pieces. Let's see here.
What do you think of the clementine?
Well, yeah, we used to only get those out of Spain, and now they're all over California and other areas, and it's wow, the mandarin, that whole segment has really grown with a lot of great varieties.
Yeah,
the clementines and then the newer varieties, the sumo, which I used to sell a lot of the ones that didn't make the sumo grade, the sumo shape and form. I would buy a lot of those and full of. In banana boxes. They would load them in banana boxes, and I would buy those and sell them at my store because it's a decoupon and it still really tastes really good. It just doesn't have the sumo shape and form and color that they needed
Huh.
to make.
They're
that
just as
pack.
good in taste, I'm sure.
Oh, absolutely. You know,
Yeah.
and I could sell them cheaper than what the stores are selling the sumos for.
Right. That wasn't hard.
No, not at all. The massive amounts of imports.
Right.
I remember when avocados, Hass was done. You do the green skin varieties. Hass
Right.
comes back in, and you have those. And then we started bringing them in from Chile. I'll never forget, because when they ripened, they never turned black. They turned this really gorgeous brownish henna type color, but never completely turned black. And then, I don't know where those are being sold now here in the United States, because then we started getting them in from Mexico. Now we get avocados in from Peru. The avocado popularity has grown so much over the decades that just getting them year round all over the country. I remember when it was pretty much a local thing here, some out of Florida, and it wasn't that big of a popular thing.
And when we first started working with the California Avocado Commission, Mexican avocados were banned. You couldn't import them.
Yeah, you could only import them during certain times of the year in certain states. I remember that.
Yeah. I think they didn't allow them at all in California, but I might be mistaken on
Right.
that.
No, we didn't.
Any more tips or anything else you want to give to our listeners to help them with their produce purchasing?
Well, look, you're going to see price fluctuations. You're going to see shortages. It's just been that way since last summer, when the 3 different diseases hit the soil in Salinas.
Oh, right.
We went down to Yuma and had weather issues there. We always come back in the spring. They've come back to flooded fields, crops that they couldn't plant, and we're going to feel the impact of that. Now, a lot of folks, when it rains really hard, or we have freezes, people don't realize that the impact of that in the stores, what they get on the shelves, is later down the road, because these crops take time to grow.
Right.
Well, we couldn't plant. They couldn't plant in January like they usually do for April harvest,
because of all those atmospheric rivers and the deluge.
Yes, exactly. Some of them are still underwater, and so we're going to see gaps that are, it just affects it, because you can't right now in Yuma. I think it's 90 or 100 degrees, so they're done there. They move up to Huron, then they come back here, do what they can. So we'll see that.
Okay.
Just keep your eyes peeled and don't freak out. But the best deal for fresh produce, like I always say, is getting the best, freshest, high quality produce for your money. Sometimes you're going to pay $3 or $4 for an avocado. Sometimes you're going to pay $2 for 98. Just depends. Yeah. But you always want the best condition for your money. Sometimes you'll go in a store and they're blowing something out cheap, but then you're going to take it home and it's not going to last. Make sure you're buying good produce, pay for it. Your body will thank you. Your mind will thank you. And so will your family, because you always want the best. That's all there is to it.
Well, that's a great conclusion here for good advice from Dan, the produce man. We're so grateful to have you on the show, and so inspired by your passion for these fresh fruits and veggies.
Well, likewise, I'm inspired by yours too. There's nothing like hanging out with other produce people and talking fresh produce. So I've very much enjoyed it. Cynthia, Rick, and Edwin, thank you so much for having me today.
Thank you.
Thanks,
All
Dan.
right, folks.
Thank you, Dan. It's so great. I really enjoy talking to you, and we'll hope to have you again.
Nice to meet you.
Thanks again.
Bye.
Bye. Well, thank you, listeners, for tuning in to the Produce Buzzers podcast, brought to you by Produce Buzz, the gathering place for lovers of fresh fruits and veggies. We hope you were entertained a bit and educated a lot about fresh produce. Be sure to join us next time, and please tell your friends to do so as well. Like, share, and comment on our Produce Buzz Facebook page. And check out our website at www.producebuzz.com. There you will find articles about fresh fruits and veggies, how to select, store, and prepare them, as well as lots of interesting facts about all the wonderful bounty the earth provides for us. Until next time, be fruitful and don't forget to veg out.